As always, we take a look at this week's top political development stories, and we're now joined by SABC News senior politics reporter Ntebo Mokobo. Ntebo, thank you so much for your time once again. Now, Action SA vowed to take the South African Police Service exoneration of General Rood and his colleague after being found guilty by IPID and the PP. Now, does this expose a crisis of credibility within the South African Police Service's internal accountability processes, especially after these findings, which differed from both the IPID and the Public Protector?
Well, good evening, Lopang, and good evening to the viewers at home. Yes, indeed. It exposes that, it seems the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. If the IPID, which is tasked with investigating any wrongdoing on the part of the police, has come out with a sort of a sanction against the two colleagues, and the internal process of the SAPS then exonerates them, that on its own says a lot about the credibility even of that investigation, either by the SAPS or the IPID. One is not telling the truth, or they can't just work for the same company and not be in sync in terms of the sanction. So Action SA has vowed that it will take the matter to the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria to make sure that justice is done and is seen to be done in this case.
Now, Ntebo, we now move on to the South Africa-Namibia Binational Commission that is currently taking place, where President Cyril Ramaphosa is currently serving as co-chair. Now, he's called for stronger collaborations between the two countries in areas such as energy. Now, what outcomes should South Africans expect from the commission?
Well, Lopang, the relations between South Africa and Namibia, in fact, these two countries are like, as the president has said, that is, they are joined on the hip. Relations between these two countries at some point, dates back to many years of SWAPO and the ANC, and ultimately those relations were formalized in 1994. And even today, those relations are still strong. If you look at Namibia, for instance, it got its independence from South Africa in 1989. And anything that you would buy, for instance, in Namibia, comes from South Africa. Around 50 companies, South African companies, are doing business there. Yeah. And of course, even if you go to an ATM in Namibia, you would get your money in rands, either in rands or in Namibian rands. Yeah. So the two countries, if you like, are like the head and tail of a coin. You can't separate the two. And even the relationship between the two political organizations of fraternal parties, SWAPO and the ANC, date back to the early 1960s, and even the formalization in 1994. That on its own says a lot. And of course, the Binational Commission, it's normally a relationship that is overseen by the two presidents. The two presidents co-chair the Binational Commission, and they look into the implementation of the resolution and even the memorandum of understanding that were signed between the two countries. So they oversee those implementation. And this was the fourth Binational Commission. Yes. If you look at the business between the two countries, or the two-way trade, it's skewed in favor of South Africa. So there is an attempt to sort of level the playing field. Yeah.
Now, Ntebo, another big one this week, the TRC hearings. And this week, the hearings featured 3 former police ministers. Now, what stood out most from the testimony of the former police ministers? Now, this includes Fikile Mbalula.
Well, Fikile Mbalula didn't really say much about his role in the TRC hearings, because he said that, many things that happened were like operational. He was the political head of the department. Remember, he was a deputy minister, I think, in 2009. Yeah. And in 2018, he became the minister. So there wasn't really much. But what stood out really came from Begitele, who said at some point, while he was the minister of police, he has to sign off the assistance from the Legal Aid Board by government to help those people who were perpetrators of the apartheid against his own comrade. Yeah. So that on its own was like a bit of immorality on his part to really sign and help the people who perpetrated atrocities against his own people. So that's what he said. But he said he never interfered with any investigation in that regard. Even Fikile Mbalula said that. The only thing that was still outstanding is that the former minister, Ntebo, was always also expected to appear before the TRC hearings, and that is likely to happen in the next week or so.
Now, just under 4 months until those local government elections, and the MK party has welcomed Zandile Gumede onto its ranks. Now, what does Zandile Gumede's move to the party signal politically, and does it strengthen the party ahead of the forthcoming elections, or does it come with a lot of political baggage?
Well, it comes with a lot of political baggage, but I think for the IFP, it's like a big fish. I mean, for the MK party, it's like a big fish, because you would recall she was the regional chair of the ANC, I think around 2015, and of course in 2019 she became the mayor in that province or in that municipality. She's a known figure in KZN, but it comes with a baggage because she's currently facing, I think, the 320 million rand solid waste tender. And even now, she's still attending that court. So if she becomes the mayor, possibilities are, even in the foreseeable future, there's going to be a problem because she will be in and out of court. But that on its own will help the MK party because she's a notable figure in KZN, in the municipality of Ithekini. And of course, known. I mean, she has done a lot really in terms of reviving and revitalizing and electrifying the democratic electorate for the ANC at some point. So for the MK party, that's a big fish.
Finally now, Ntebo, ANC has finalized its interviews of its mayoral candidates, and those who made it are likely to be announced sometime next week. Now, how significant will these choices be in determining the party's electoral fortunes in the upcoming local government elections?
Well, you recall, I mean, the ANC has gone out to really make sure that it comes with the best out of the rest. And they've managed to do that. They've interviewed a number of people. For instance, if you look at Tshwane, we're told that around 5,000 people were considered. And that on its own made the vetting process and the selection process an intense one. And of course, if you look at Johannesburg, for instance, because those are the municipalities that have been watched. If you look at Johannesburg, for instance, we're told at some point that we've got Jabu Muleket, who was also considered, but he has since withdrawn. And we've got Luis Omasuku, Dada Morero, as well as Reverend Frank Chikane, who seemingly is leading the pack. And of course, if you look at the Eastern Cape, you've got Andy Lelungisa, who wanted to become the mayor, but apparently there's a case, I mean, there are two cases where he was found guilty, and that on its own seems to be standing on his way. So there are a number of really permutations in terms of who is likely to come out in the 8 metros, and of course the 22 secondary municipalities, as the ANC said. And those interviews have been finalized, and sometime next week, the Secretary General is expected to let the cat out of the bag in terms of who's likely to be mayors in those 8 metros and the 22 secondary municipalities.
Ntebo, as always, thank you so much for that wrap. Ntebo Mokobo, they're our senior politics reporter. They're giving us a wrap of this week's top political stories.